Hello Frontline Church family and friends. We are in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 3 to 18, and Paul starts in this passage by talking as a leader, apostolic leaders. He says we commend ourselves, and I just want you to sort of imagine the scene of someone getting up to speak or preach or teach, and as is the case even today in our part of the world, and even more so in the ancient world than in parts of the world, when you get up to preach, either somebody is going to introduce you and go through your credentials, or you are going to introduce yourself and go through your credentials. What qualifies you to be up there speaking? And so I want you to imagine that scene of that Paul sets here. You know, ladies and gentlemen, today's speaker, this is what qualifies them to speak into your life. That they've endured hardship, that they've experienced trouble, that they have had sleepless nights. These are the qualifications that mean we should really listen to Paul and what he's saying here. That he has done things worthy of glory, but has been treated with dishonour. That he has had both bad reports about his work and good reports about his work. That he has been genuine and yet considered an imposter. This is the qualifications that equip Paul to speak into their lives. And it just made me think, first of all, about really what leadership looks like. This is a really good description of godly leadership. Leading in a godly way, leading in an effective way, does not mean that life will become easy. I hope you aspire to leadership. I would encourage you to aspire to leadership if you're not in leadership. For those who are in leadership, I want to encourage you. You can be doing everything right, but it doesn't mean that you won't experience these things that Paul himself experienced. And I think it's important to remind ourselves of that and to know that. So for me, this speaks of really what good leadership looks like. And the second thing really on that is that we know really that if you think about like the teaching that's impacted your life, it's one thing to hear a person preach or teach or speak. It's another thing altogether to hear someone speak or teach from a place of deep experience and hardship, from real, from a life lived in this sort of way. And that place of experience, it gives real weight to what that person is saying. And so I think as leaders, it's important that we are vulnerable with those that we lead. I listened to someone talk recently about the difference between transparency and vulnerability. Transparency really is quite transactional. It's almost like a technique. It's like I will tell you something about my life that you do not know, about my sin or my struggles, so that I might influence you and we might build rapport and I might be able to lead you better. And of course, it just, you can sniff that a mile off, can't you? You know it's vulnerability when there's a cost. You know there's vulnerability when you think, oh crikey, I almost daren't say that. What the risk, you're aware of the risk in sharing it. And so I think appropriate vulnerability is so important in leadership. And Paul says, look, Corinthians, we have spoken freely to you. I think he's talking there about how he's spoken freely about the suffering and hardship that he's experienced as a leader, even in leading them. And the outcome of that is that he can call them to open their hearts to him and his message because of the way he's fathered them, that relationship. Just very quickly moving on to verse 14, the idea of being unequally yoked. a believer yoked to an unbeliever. And that word yoke is talking about a piece of wood that would bind together two oxen or two horses or two cows so that they could plough the field in the same direction. And Paul's saying that you can't yoke a believer together with an unbeliever. They'll pull in different directions. And I think he is talking about all types of covenant relationships. Clearly, marriage is one of those covenant relationships that he is referring to, because he uses that word agreement there. So it's covenant language. I don't think it just relates to marriage. I know in the past we've not gone into the purchase of property with people who've not been Christians because we felt that verse spoke into it. But I suppose, I want to say fairly tentatively, because this is not, I've been married for 22 years. But so I know it's easy for me to say, but I think that when you're single, the fear is that you will lose out. The fear is that you will lose out on a relationship. But what we actually read here in this challenge around being unequally yoked, not being unequally yoked, is that God will walk with you. God reinstates his promise of relationship and intimacy. I will be a father to you. You will be my son, you will be my daughter. So I'd encourage you, if that is a challenge that you're facing, hold on to that promise that God will meet that need for relationship, even with his own presence. Have a wonderful day.